Senior Chief Brennan shoved the filthy rag toward her face, grinning. "Do it, bandage girl. Suck it clean. Show us what nurses are good for." 12 Navy SEALs laughed. Riley Dawson, 22 years old, 5'4", standing in the middle of Camp Valor with dust in her hair and humiliation ringing in her ears, didn't flinch. She took the rag, and she threw it back in Brennan's face. Nobody laughed after that, because what happened next would destroy careers, expose a weapons trafficking ring protected by a 2-star general, and uncover 3 murdered Marines buried in the Syrian desert. One of them was her brother. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and follow Riley's story to the very end. Drop a comment with the city you're watching from, so I can see just how far this story travels. 6 weeks before that moment, Corporal Ethan Dawson sent his sister a message. 3 lines, no punctuation, no greeting, just raw fear disguised as instructions. "Something's wrong here. Brennan's running side ops. Don't trust the supply chain. If I go dark, look for the red ledger." Riley read that message 14 times. Then Ethan went dark. 2 days later, Naval Criminal Investigative Service notified his family that Corporal Ethan Dawson was killed in action during a routine patrol in eastern Syria. Ambush. Small arms fire. Body unrecoverable due to hostile terrain. Riley knew that was a lie before the notification officer finished speaking. Ethan Dawson didn't die in ambushes. He was too smart, too careful, too trained. And body unrecoverable was military language for, "We don't want you asking questions." So Riley stopped asking questions and started planning. She was already qualified. That was the part nobody knew. While Ethan had been deploying to Syria, Riley had been grinding through the most classified selection program in U.S. Special Operations history, Project Athena, the first all-female SEAL pipeline. Bud/S-Class 347. 6 months of hell that broke 38 candidates down to 4 graduates. Riley finished first in her class. Fastest obstacle course time. Highest marksmanship scores. The only candidate who never rang the bell, never considered ringing the bell, never even looked at the bell. Her instructor said she was gifted. Riley knew the truth. She wasn't gifted. She was furious. She'd been furious her entire life, at a world that looked at her size and her face and decided what she couldn't do before she opened her mouth. Fury was fuel, and Riley Dawson had a full tank. Commander Diane Langford recruited her 3 days after Ethan's death notification. Langford ran NCIS Special Operations out of CENTCOM, the kind of investigations that never appeared in official reports, and never would. She'd been tracking irregularities at Camp Valor for months. Supply chain anomalies, weapons manifests that didn't add up. 3 Marines who vanished on a patrol led by Senior Chief Marcus Brennan's SEAL team, and an investigation that closed faster than it opened. "We need someone inside that base," Langford told Riley in a windowless briefing room at Dam Neck. "Someone who can get close to Brennan's team without triggering suspicion. Someone with SEAL-level training who doesn't look like a SEAL." "You need a nurse," Riley said. "I need you." Langford slid a folder across the table. "Camp Valor, Joint Special Operations Base, Eastern Syria. Brennan's Task Force Raptor runs operations out of there. Your cover is combat field nurse, assigned to the base medical unit. Your mission is to identify and document whatever Brennan is hiding, locate evidence of what happened to those 3 Marines, and get out alive." Riley opened the folder, read Brennan's file. 12 years in the teams, 3 combat tours, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor, commendations from every commanding officer he'd ever served under. On paper, He was a hero. And off paper? Riley asked. Off paper, I believe he murdered 3 American Marines and buried them somewhere in the Syrian desert to protect an operation that someone very high up doesn't want exposed. Langford paused. One of those Marines was your brother. I'm telling you that because you deserve to know, and because I need to know right now whether that makes you more effective or more reckless. Riley closed the folder. It makes me the only person in this room who won't stop until it's finished. That's what I was afraid of. Langford held her gaze. And exactly what I need. Riley arrived at Camp Valor on a Tuesday transport flight, carrying a medic's bag and wearing an olive green V-neck t-shirt tucked into camouflage cargo pants. Her long dark brown hair fell past her shoulders. She looked like a college student who'd taken a wrong turn at the airport. That was the point. Brennan's team noticed her within the hour. Task Force Raptor operated like a private kingdom inside Camp Valor. 12 operators who answered to Brennan first and everyone else second. They had their own barracks, their own armory, their own rules. And they had a tradition of breaking new support staff the way rodeo cowboys break horses. Fast, hard, and without apology. Petty Officer Jake Ramos, Coyote to his teammates, drew first blood. He intercepted Riley on her way to the medical tent, blocking her path with 210 pounds of swagger and sunburn. New nurse? He looked her up and down with an evaluation that had nothing to do with her qualifications. How old are you? 12? 22. 22, Ramos laughed, and turned to Petty Officer Dominic Cross, the team's breacher, who was watching from a camp chair with the enthusiasm of a man about to enjoy a show. Dom, we got ourselves a baby nurse. Bet she cries before dinner. Lunch, Cross said. I give her till lunch. Riley shifted her medic bag on her shoulder. Is there something you need, Petty Officer? Or are you just practicing being unpleasant? The smile dropped off Ramos's face like someone had slapped it. Cross sat up straight. 2 other SEALs who'd been watching from a distance exchanged a glance that said, "This one's got a mouth." What I need, Ramos said, stepping closer, close enough that Riley could smell the tobacco on his breath, is for you to understand how things work here. Medical staff carries supplies. Medical staff cleans equipment. Medical staff stays out of our way and doesn't ask questions. You got a problem with that, bandage girl? Riley held his stare. Every instinct from BUD/S told her to put this man on the ground. Wrist lock, hip throw, face in the dirt. 3 seconds. She could do it in 2. But that would blow her cover before she'd unpacked her bag, so she swallowed the fury and filed it away. No problem, Petty Officer. Good. Ramos pointed toward a stack of ammunition crates near the vehicle depot. Those need moving to the north bunker. 80 pounds each. Get started. Riley looked at the crates, counted 12, looked at the distance to the north bunker. 1/4 mile across open ground in 112-degree heat. Looked back at Ramos. That's not a medical task. It is today. Welcome to Camp Valor. She carried the crates. All 12. Took her 90 minutes in heat that made the air shimmer and her vision blur. Ramos and Cross watched from shade the entire time, drinking water they didn't offer to share, making comments about her speed, her size, her usefulness. Riley finished the last crate and stood in front of Ramos, sweat-soaked, hands raw, breathing hard but standing straight. Anything else? Ramos blinked. He'd expected her to quit after the 3rd crate. Expected tears, complaints, a request to speak with someone in charge. The fact that she was still standing, still looking him in the eye, introduced a variable he hadn't calculated. Yeah, he tossed her a filthy maintenance rag, black with gun oil and carbon residue. Clean the medical tent floor. On your knees. Riley took the rag, went to the medical tent, got on her knees, cleaned the floor while Cross deliberately spilled water behind her so she'd have to start over. She started over. Twice. 3 times. That night, alone in her bunk, Riley pulled out the encrypted tablet hidden inside her medic bag's false bottom. She logged the day's events, documented Ramos's behavior, Cross's participation, the team's power structure. Then she opened Ethan's last message and read it again. If I go dark, look for the red ledger. I'm here, Ethan, she whispered to the screen. I'm inside, and I swear to God, I'm going to find out what they did to you. She closed the tablet and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Her hands throbbed. Her shoulders burned. Her pride was a bruise she could feel in her chest every time she breathed. But beneath all of that, beneath the exhaustion and the humiliation and the grief, something else burned. The same thing that had carried her through Hell Week when her body said stop, and her mind said stop, and every rational thought in her head said stop. Riley Dawson didn't stop. That was the thing about her that people kept learning too late. The first week crawled by in a haze of heat and harassment. Every morning brought a new indignity. Tuesday, Ramos made her inventory ammunition by hand while he read her count back wrong so she'd have to restart. Wednesday, Cross accidentally knocked a tray of surgical instruments into the dirt and told her to re-sterilize everything. Thursday, a SEAL she hadn't met yet, a quiet, heavy-set operator named Briggs, urinated near the medical tent entrance and told her to mop it up. Riley mopped, inventoried, re-sterilized, carried, cleaned, absorbed every insult with the same flat expression and the same 2-word response. Yes, Petty Officer. Yes, Senior Chief. Anything else? She became invisible in the way they wanted her to be, a small, quiet woman who did what she was told and didn't cause problems. Exactly the kind of person nobody watched closely. Exactly the kind of person who could plant listening devices at 2 a.m. without anyone noticing. Her first device went into the supply depot doorframe on night 3. Microtransmitter, range of 40 feet. Battery life of 30 days. By night 5, she had 4 devices spread across camp. Brennan's quarters, the vehicle bay, the communications desk, and the team's unofficial gathering spot behind the armory, where they talked freely because they believed no one was listening. She was listening. Every word. Every night. And on night 7, she heard something that made her blood go cold. Brennan's voice, satellite phone, 2,200 hours. Calm, professional. The voice of a man discussing routine logistics. Package status confirmed. Next delivery window, Thursday. Same protocol. Medical supply crates, 6 units. A pause, then. The new nurse isn't a problem. She's nobody. Riley sat in darkness, headphones pressed tight, heart hammering. He'd mentioned her, which meant he'd thought about her, which meant, at some level, conscious or not, Marcus Brennan was already watching. She had days, maybe weeks, before nobody stopped being good enough cover. Before someone looked too closely at the quiet nurse who never complained, never broke, never behaved the way broken people were supposed to behave. She needed to move faster. She needed the red ledger. And she needed to find out what was inside those medical supply crates that arrived every Thursday at 3 a.m. Because whatever Senior Chief Marcus Brennan was hiding at Camp Valor, it was worth killing for. He'd already proved that with 3 Marines and a shallow grave. And one of those Marines had taught Riley to ride a bike. had scared away bullies in middle school, had held her hand at their mother's funeral, and had sent her one final message from the edge of the world before someone silenced him forever. Riley pulled Ethan's dog tags from beneath her shirt, pressed them against her lips, tasted metal and memory, and the kind of promise that doesn't bend, doesn't break, doesn't ever let go. Thursday came. Riley was ready. She'd spent 3 nights memorizing the supply depot's layout. Guard rotation changed at 02:45. 15-minute gap before the replacement arrived. The depot's rear lock was military grade but standard issue, the same model she'd picked in 40 seconds during SEER training at Warner Springs. Thursday's delivery was logged for 0300. She needed to be inside, hidden, and recording by 0250. At 0240, she slipped out of her bunk. No flashlight, no sound. She moved the way her Bud/S instructors had drilled into her. Weight on the balls of her feet, breathing shallow, body low. Ethan's dog tags pressed cold against her sternum beneath her shirt. The lock took 37 seconds. She was inside by 0243. The depot smelled like diesel and cardboard and something chemical she couldn't identify. Riley wedged herself behind a stack of crates in the northeast corner, activated her camera, and waited. Her heartbeat was the loudest sound in the building. At 0301, headlights swept across the depot's loading door. An engine idled. 2 doors opened and closed. Riley heard boots on gravel, then Brennan's voice, low and operational. Same spot, back row. Don't stack them with a regular inventory. 2 men entered carrying a crate between them. Civilians. Short hair, expensive boots, tactical watches. Private contractors, not military. They moved with the efficiency of men who'd done this many times and planned to do it many more. 6 crates total. Red Cross markings on every one. Medical supplies. Perishable, stenciled in block letters. Brennan signed something on a clipboard. Didn't speak another word to the contractors. They left. Truck pulled away. Brennan padlocked the new crates into a sectioned-off area at the depot's rear, separate from everything else, and walked out. Riley waited 20 minutes, counted every second. Then she moved to the padlock section and went to work. The lock opened in 40 seconds. She lifted the first crate's lid, and her hands stopped moving. Igla-S surface-to-air missile components. Russian manufacture. Factory grease still wet on the housings. She recognized them from the intelligence briefings at Dam Neck. Shoulder-fired, infrared homing, capable of bringing down any helicopter flying below 13,000 feet. American helicopters. Medevac birds. Troop transports. The aircraft that carried wounded soldiers to safety. Riley's jaw locked so tight her teeth ached. She photographed every component. Serial numbers, shipping labels, manufacturer markings. Then she opened the second crate. Kornet anti-tank guided missiles. Third crate. Russian encryption modules. Communications equipment that could make any militia invisible to American signals intelligence. Someone on this base was selling the tools to kill American soldiers. And Senior Chief Marcus Brennan was the delivery man. Riley opened the fourth crate, and her heart stopped. Beneath the weapons, wedged into a false bottom panel, a red notebook. Small, battered, pages bent from being shoved into a space too tight. She knew what it was before her fingers touched it. She knew the handwriting before she opened the cover. Ethan's red ledger. She opened to the first page. Dates in her brother's cramped handwriting. Names, dollar amounts, GPS coordinates of transfer points. Photographs taped to pages. Blurry shots of crates being loaded onto unmarked trucks in darkness. Every weapons delivery for 8 months, documented with the precision of a man who knew he might not survive long enough to testify. Riley turned pages with fingers that trembled for the first time since she'd arrived at Camp Valor. Transaction records, authorization codes that Ethan had circled in red ink with question marks, codes that originated far above Brennan's pay grade. Communication intercepts, dates cross-referenced with patrol schedules. Every piece of the puzzle Ethan had been assembling before someone put him in the ground. The last page with writing hit her like a bullet to the chest. Dated 6 weeks ago, 2 days before Ethan went dark. Brennan knows I'm watching. Mercer warned me to stop. I can't stop. These weapons killed 11 Marines in Deir ez-Zor last month. Our weapons. American weapons, sold to the people who use them on Americans. If something happens to me, Riley will find this. She always finds things. I'm sorry, Riles. I should have been smarter. But someone has to stop this. Love, E. Riley pressed the notebook against her chest, bit the inside of her cheek until blood flooded her mouth. She would not cry. Not here. Not surrounded by the weapons that funded her brother's murder. Crying was for after. Crying was for when Marcus Brennan was in handcuffs and every man who'd touched this operation was burning. She slid the ledger into her waistband, pulled her shirt over it, closed the crates, replaced the padlock, turned toward the door. Brennan was standing in it. Couldn't sleep, bandage girl? His voice was casual. His eyes were not. They moved from her face to her hands to her waistband, where the ledger made a barely visible bulge beneath fabric. Riley's pulse spiked, but her face stayed flat. Looking for morphine supplies. We're running low, and the regular inventory didn't match the logs. Morphine's in the medical tent, not back here. Brennan stepped closer. This section's off limits. Didn't see the padlock? It was open when I got here. Brennan stopped 2 feet away, close enough for Riley to smell gun oil and coffee and the faint chemical sweetness of whatever aftershave he used. His eyes held hers with the patience of a predator who had all the time in the world. Was it? Not a question. Must not have latched properly. Silence. 5 seconds that lasted 5 years. Riley calculated the distance to the door, calculated the angles if this went wrong, calculated the odds of taking down a 6'2" SEAL with 15 years of combat experience in a confined space while hiding a stolen notebook under her shirt. The numbers weren't good. Brennan reached out and grabbed her arm, not fast, deliberate. His fingers closed around her bicep and squeezed until she felt bone shift against muscle. His face didn't change expression. This wasn't anger. This was a message. Stay in your lane, nurse. People who wander around this base at night have accidents, bad ones. The kind nobody investigates because nobody cares about a nurse who tripped in the dark. He released her arm, stepped aside, left the doorway open. Riley walked out. Didn't run. Didn't look back. She crossed the camp with steady steps and a heartbeat so loud she was certain the entire base could hear it. Her arm throbbed where Brennan's fingers had been. The bruise would be black by morning. She made it to her bunk, locked the door, and sat on the mattress with Ethan's ledger in her hands. Opened it again. Read his final entry again. Riley will find this. She always finds things. I found it, she whispered. Now I need to find you. She activated the encrypted transmitter and sent a burst to Langford. 4 words. Red ledger secured. Weapons confirmed. Langford's response came in 11 minutes. Understood. Extract with evidence within 48 hours. Do not engage. 48 hours. Riley could work with that. She'd survived Hell Week on less. But the next morning changed everything. She was in the medical tent at 600, treating the young ranger with a shrapnel wound, talking him through the stitches with a steady voice she'd perfected during training. "Breathe for me, Kendall. Almost done. You're doing good." That's when the explosion hit. 300 meters east, big enough to rattle equipment off shelves and send the tent poles swaying. Then the radio erupted. "Mass casualty event. IED strike on convoy. 4 wounded, 2 critical. Medevac to medical tent. ETA 2 minutes. Riley's hands didn't hesitate. She had the trauma bay prepped in 90 seconds. Tourniquets, IV bags, intubation kits. The 2 other medics, Peters and Huang, stood paralyzed. They'd never seen mass casualties. They'd been on base 3 weeks, and the worst injury they'd treated was sunburn. "Peters, blood pressure cuffs on beds 2 and 4. Huang, 2 units of O-neg from the cooler and surgical kit on standby. Move, now." They moved. Something in Riley's voice left no room for hesitation. The wounded came fast. A sergeant with both legs shattered, bone through skin, screaming in a pitch that stopped sounding human. Riley stabilized him in 4 minutes. Tourniquets, IV access, ketamine pushed. Screaming dropped to silence. Second casualty, sucking chest wound, the wet hissing sound of a collapsing lung. Riley grabbed a 14-gauge needle and drove it between his second and third rib, without hesitation. Air rushed out. The soldier gasped and started breathing again. Third, femoral artery laceration, bleeding out in real time. Riley clamped the vessel, packed the wound, and called for surgical evacuation while simultaneously managing the 4th casualty, a concussion case trying to stand up and wander into the desert. 4 patients, 4 life-threatening injuries, 12 minutes. All 4 stabilized. Riley didn't notice Brennan until she looked up and found him in the tent entrance, arms crossed, face unreadable. Behind him, Ramos had stopped chewing his tobacco. Cross was standing instead of sitting for the first time since Riley had arrived. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Brennan's voice was quiet. Quiet Brennan was dangerous Brennan. "Navy nursing program, trauma module." "Nursing program doesn't teach needle decompression in 3 seconds. I've seen combat medics with 10 years fumble that procedure." Brennan uncrossed his arms. "Who are you, Dawson?" "I'm a fast learner, Senior Chief." Their eyes locked. Riley felt the wire stretching between them, thin and razor-sharp. Brennan was measuring her, not as a nuisance anymore, as a threat. She could see the machinery behind his eyes, recalculating everything he thought he knew about the quiet nurse who carried ammo crates without complaining and cleaned floors without crying, and just saved 4 lives with the efficiency of a battlefield surgeon. "Stay in your lane." He said it again. Same words as the depot, but the tone had changed. Last night was a warning. This was something else. This was a man realizing the ground beneath him might not be as solid as he thought. He turned and walked out, but he looked back once, and that backward glance told Riley 2 things. First, her clock was now ticking faster than 48 hours. Second, Brennan was going to do what cornered predators always do. He was going to hunt her before she could hunt him. That night, Riley transmitted an updated report to Langford. Included the medical incident, Brennan's suspicion, her accelerated timeline. Langford's response was immediate and sharp. "Extract now. That's an order." Riley typed back. "Not without the bodies. Mercer knows where they're buried. I need one more day." Langford didn't respond for 6 minutes. When she did, it was a single line that carried the weight of a woman who'd been running covert operations long enough to know when an asset was about to go off script. 24 hours. Then I'm pulling you out whether you're ready or not. Riley closed the transmitter, pulled Ethan's dog tags from beneath her shirt, pressed them against her forehead, and closed her eyes. One day. She had one day to get a confession out of a man who murdered her brother, find the graves of 3 Marines, and get out of Camp Valor alive, while a team of 12 Navy SEALs decided whether she was a nurse or a problem that needed burying. Somewhere across camp, she heard Brennan's voice on the radio, calm and controlled, scheduling a patrol for tomorrow morning. A trust-building exercise for the medical staff, he called it. The new nurse was specifically invited. Riley's hands went still around the dog tags. She knew what that invitation meant. She'd seen it in his eyes at the medical tent. She'd heard it in his voice at the depot. Brennan wasn't scheduling a patrol. He was scheduling a kill. Riley climbed into the Humvee at 0600, knowing she might not climb out again. Brennan had assembled the full patrol. Ramos riding shotgun, chewing tobacco and checking his rifle with the casual rhythm of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Cross behind the wheel, thick hands steady, eyes forward. 2 more SEALs, Harris and Briggs, in the second vehicle. And squeezed into the back seat beside Riley, Peters and Huang, both medics pale and nervous, and completely unaware that this wasn't a trust-building exercise. It was an execution with an audience. The one variable Riley hadn't expected was sitting directly across from her in the rear-facing seat. Staff Sergeant Noah Mercer, the team's sniper. He hadn't spoken to Riley once since she'd arrived at Camp Valor, but she'd noticed him. Hard not to. While the rest of Brennan's team hazed her with enthusiasm, Mercer watched from distance with the hollow stare of a man carrying something he couldn't put down. He drank alone, ate alone, flinched when anyone mentioned the missing patrol. Riley had listened to enough recordings to know why. Mercer's voice appeared on 3 of Brennan's satellite calls. Always brief, always strained. Once, barely above a whisper. "This has to stop, Marcus. I can't keep doing this." Brennan's response: "You can, and you will. Unless you want your daughter growing up without a father." Mercer was trapped, same as Riley. Different cage. The convoy rolled north for 40 minutes. Nobody spoke. Brennan sat in the passenger seat of the lead vehicle, studying a map he didn't need, because they both knew this had nothing to do with terrain. Riley kept her breathing steady, kept her hands relaxed on her knees, kept Ethan's dog tags pressed against her chest beneath her shirt, like a second heartbeat. She'd hidden the red ledger in the medical tent's false ceiling before dawn. If something happened to her, Langford's extraction team would find it. The evidence would survive, even if Riley didn't. That was the calculation she'd made at 0400, lying in her bunk, staring at darkness. The mission mattered more than the operator. Ethan had understood that. Now Riley did too. The vehicle stopped. Brennan climbed out, stretched like a man on a Sunday drive, and waved the group forward. "Everybody out, spread out, standard patrol formation. Medical staff in the center. Stay close, stay quiet, and do exactly what I tell you." They walked for 20 minutes. Riley counted steps, tracked direction, memorized landmarks. Force of habit. Survival habit. Then Brennan raised his fist. Everyone stopped. "Ramos, Cross, take the medics to the east structure. Run them through casualty collection procedures. Harris, Briggs, perimeter security." Everyone moved, except Brennan, and Mercer, and Riley. The three of them stood in silence while the rest of the team moved out of sight. Riley felt the air change, felt the moment shift from performance to truth. Brennan's posture was different now, looser, more dangerous. A man dropping a mask because the audience had left. "Walk with me, Dawson." It wasn't a request. Riley followed him between two structures. Mercer trailed behind, rifle across his chest, eyes darting between Brennan and Riley like a man watching a fuse burn toward a bomb. Brennan stopped, turned, studied Riley with the full weight of a man who'd made decisions about who lived and who died in rooms exactly like this one. "I'm going to ask you one question. Think very carefully before you answer." He paused. "Who sent you?" Riley's training held her face still. "Nobody sent me. I'm a nurse assigned to—" "Stop." Brennan's voice didn't rise. It dropped, which was worse. "I've been running operations for 12 years. I've interrogated men who were trained to resist interrogation. You think I can't read a 22-year-old woman who flinches every time someone says the word patrol?" He stepped closer. "You don't move like a nurse. You don't think like a nurse. When that IED casualty came in yesterday, you performed a needle decompression faster than my medic could have done it, and Kincaid has 8 years of combat medicine. Your hands didn't shake. Your voice didn't waver. You gave orders like someone who's been giving orders under fire her entire career." Another step. "So I'll ask again. Who sent you?" "I told you, I'm a fast— If you say fast learner one more time, I'm going to lose my patience. And you do not want to see me without patience." Silence. Wind. The distant sound of Ramos barking instructions at the medics. Riley calculated her options. Cover was blown. Lying would only accelerate whatever Brennan had planned. Truth was a weapon, but only if she controlled the timing. She chose a middle path. Enough truth to shift the ground, not enough to give him everything. NCIS. She said it flat. No drama, no defiance. "I'm here under NCIS investigative authority, and I know about the supply depot." Brennan's expression didn't change. Not surprise, not anger, something colder. Recognition. The face of a chess player who just confirmed his opponent's position. "Mercer." Brennan didn't look away from Riley. "Restrain her." Mercer didn't move. "That's an order, Staff Sergeant." "Marcus." Mercer's voice cracked on the name. "Don't do this." Brennan turned, slowly. The motion carried the weight of years of absolute authority. "What did you say to me?" "I said don't do this. Not again. Not like the others." The words hung between them like a grenade with a pin pulled. Riley watched Brennan's jaw tighten, watched something ancient and reptilian surface behind his eyes. "You've got about 3 seconds to remember who keeps your daughter alive, Noah." Mercer's face collapsed. The sniper, the warrior, the man who could put a bullet through a target at 1,000 yards, crumbled in front of Riley like a building with its foundations blown. His hands shook. His eyes filled. And he raised his rifle, pointed it at Riley. "I'm sorry," Mercer whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize to her." Brennan pulled zip ties from his vest. "Restrain her hands. We're going to have a conversation, and then we're going to solve this problem the same way we solved the last one." Riley let Mercer approach. Let him reach for her wrists. She needed him close. Needed Brennan's attention split for half a second. Mercer's hands touched her wrists. Riley moved. She seized Mercer's rifle by the barrel, twisted it sideways, and ripped it from his grip before his brain registered the motion. In the same movement, she drove her elbow backward into Brennan's solar plexus. Not hard enough to drop him. He was too big, too trained. But hard enough to buy 2 seconds of breathing room. Brennan recovered fast, insanely fast. His fist caught Riley's shoulder and spun her sideways. She rolled with it, came up with Mercer's rifle shouldered, and put the red dot center mass on Brennan's chest. "Don't." Riley's voice was ice. "Hands where I can see them. Both of you." Brennan froze. Not because he was afraid, because he was calculating. Riley could see the math running behind his eyes. Distance, angle, probability that she'd actually pull the trigger. "You won't shoot me, Dawson. You're NCIS. You need me alive for prosecution." "You're right. I need you alive." Riley shifted her aim 2 inches left. "But I don't need both your kneecaps." Brennan's hands came up slowly. Mercer was already on his knees, hands on his head, tears running into his beard. Riley kept the rifle steady, eyes locked on Brennan, mind racing through contingencies. "Here's what's going to happen," Riley said. "You're going to tell me where the bodies are. The 3 Marines from 6 weeks ago. Corporal Ethan Dawson, Lance Corporal James Ruiz, and Sergeant Michael Park. You're going to tell me exactly where you buried them." Brennan smiled. Cold. Practiced. The smile of a man who'd held every card for so long, he'd forgotten what losing looked like. "You're out of your depth, little girl. You have no idea what you're standing in the middle of." "I'm standing in the middle of a weapons trafficking operation run by a private contractor called Ironclad Defense Group, funded through falsified supply chains and protected by someone with Pentagon-level authorization codes. I know about Victor Hale. I know about the Eagle missiles and the Cornet systems and the Russian encryption modules. I know you've been selling American weapons to Syrian militias and that those weapons killed 11 Marines in Deir ez-Zor 4 months ago." The smile vanished. "And I know," Riley continued, her voice dropping to something barely above a whisper, "that Corporal Ethan Dawson documented every transaction in a red notebook that you thought you'd hidden well enough. You didn't. Because I have it, and NCIS has it, and in about 23 hours, the FBI is going to have it." Brennan's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Shock, calculation, and then something Riley hadn't expected. Amusement. "You're his sister." Brennan laughed. Actually laughed, short and sharp like a bark. "I'll be damned. That's why they sent a woman. That's why you took every piece of garbage my team threw at you without blinking. Dawson. Riley Dawson. Ethan talked about you. Said you were tougher than anyone on his team." He tilted his head. Guess he wasn't exaggerating. "Where is my brother's body?" "You want the truth, Riley? Here's the truth. Your brother was the bravest idiot I ever met. Confronted me alone. No backup. No weapon, just that damn notebook and his righteousness. Told me he was going to expose everything. Told me I could turn myself in, or he'd do it for me." Brennan's voice hardened. I put a bullet in his chest before he finished the sentence. Riley's finger tightened on the trigger. Every cell in her body screamed at her to fire. To end Marcus Brennan right here, on this ground, where her brother's blood might still be soaked into the earth. She could feel it, the pull, the gravity of vengeance, dragging her trigger finger past the point of no return. "Do it." Brennan saw it in her eyes, leaned into it. "Shoot me. That's what you want, isn't it? That's why you're really here. Not for evidence, not for prosecution. For revenge." "Shut up." "Your brother made that same face right before I pulled the trigger. Same eyes, same Dawson stubbornness. He thought being right was enough to protect him. It wasn't." "I said shut up." "You shoot me, you prove I'm right. You're not NCIS. You're not an investigator. You're a grieving sister with a gun and no plan." Riley's hands trembled. The rifle's red dot danced across Brennan's chest. She tasted blood where she'd bitten through her lip. Every breath was a war between the woman who'd sworn an oath and the sister who wanted to watch this man bleed. Then Mercer spoke. Quiet. Broken. The voice of a man stepping off a cliff. Wadi al-Khatib, 3 miles east. I know the exact spot because I dug the graves. Riley's eyes snapped to Mercer. He made us carry the bodies at night. Mercer's words came in bursts, like vomiting. Brennan, Ramos, Cross, and me. 3 shallow holes. We put them in and covered them, and Brennan said if any of us ever spoke about it, he'd kill our families. He showed me photos of my daughter's school, her bus route, her teacher's name. Mercer was sobbing now. I held the shovel, Dawson. I buried your brother. I've been burying him every night since, in my head. Brennan moved, fast, while Riley's attention was split. He lunged for the rifle, got both hands on the barrel, and twisted. Riley held on, but the leverage was wrong. He outweighed her by 80 pounds, and his grip strength was inhuman. They grappled for 2 seconds that felt like hours, bodies locked together, the rifle between them. Brennan headbutted her. Riley's vision whited out. She lost the rifle, hit the ground, tasted dirt and blood. Heard Brennan racking the charging handle. Stupid kid, just like your brother. Riley's hand closed around a rock the size of her fist. She didn't think, didn't calculate, just swung. The rock connected with Brennan's wrist, and the rifle clattered away. Riley was on her feet before it hit the ground, driving her knee into Brennan's gut, following with an elbow strike to his jaw that snapped his head sideways. Brennan staggered, didn't go down, came back with a right hook that caught Riley's temple and sent the world spinning. She blocked the second punch on instinct, countered with a palm strike to his nose. Cartilage crunched, blood sprayed. They traded blows in a savage exchange that had nothing to do with technique and everything to do with survival. Brennan was bigger, stronger, more experienced. Riley was faster, more desperate, and fighting with the accumulated fury of every ammo crate she'd carried, every floor she'd scrubbed, every night she'd spent listening to her brother's murderer discuss weapon shipments like business transactions. Brennan's fist connected with her ribs. Something cracked. Pain shot through her torso like a lightning bolt. She gasped. Brennan pressed forward, hands reaching for her throat. Riley dropped low, swept his legs. Brennan hit the ground hard. Before he could recover, she locked her arm around his neck from behind. The rear naked choke her BUD/S instructor had made her practice 10,000 times. She squeezed with everything she had left. Brennan thrashed, slammed her backward. Her broken ribs screamed. She held on. He slammed her again. She held on. Blood from her nose ran into her mouth. She held on. "You don't get to say his name," Riley whispered into his ear as his thrashing weakened. "You don't get to say any of their names. Not my brother's, not Ruiz's, not Park's. Never again." Brennan went limp, unconscious, not dead. Riley released the choke and rolled away, gasping, coughing blood, staring at the sky through vision that pulsed red with every heartbeat. She zip-tied Brennan's wrists and ankles, double restraints, used his own bootlaces as backup. Then she retrieved the rifle, checked the magazine, and turned to Mercer. The sniper hadn't moved from his knees. Tears had carved clean tracks through the dust on his face. "Get up," Riley said. "You're going to take me to those graves, and you're going to help me bring my brother home." Then a sound that turned her blood to ice. Vehicle engines, 2 of them, coming fast from the east. Riley raised binoculars from Brennan's vest and looked. 2 armored SUVs. Black, no markings. The windshields reflected the sun, but she could count the silhouettes. 6 men per vehicle. Armed. Professional. Ironclad. Hale's private army. Brennan had triggered a distress beacon before or during the fight, and his backup was 12 mercenaries with no rules of engagement and no interest in taking prisoners. Riley looked at Mercer, looked at the approaching vehicles, looked at the direction of the patrol where Peters and Huang waited, with SEALs who might or might not shoot her, depending on whose orders they followed. 12 professional killers, 1 rifle, 1 broken sniper, and approximately 4 minutes before they arrived. Riley Dawson chambered around, wiped the blood from her face with the back of her hand, and made the same choice her brother would have made. She stayed. 4 minutes. Riley's mind worked the problem the way BUD/S had trained her. Not with hope, but with math. 1 rifle. 6 magazines she'd pulled from Brennan's vest. Mercer's sidearm. 12 hostiles in armored vehicles with automatic weapons and the backing of a billionaire who could afford to lose men and buy more. Mercer! She grabbed his shoulder, shook him hard. I need a sniper. Right now. Not in 5 minutes. Right now. Can you do this? Mercer's eyes were red, swollen, unfocused. The face of a man who'd already surrendered to whatever came next. Riley slapped him, open palm hard across the cheek. His head snapped sideways, and when it came back, something had shifted. The guilt was still there, but underneath it, buried under 6 weeks of self-destruction, the operator was waking up. Northeast corner, Riley said. Elevated position. You put rounds through windshields before they dismount. Buy me 30 seconds. That's all I need. 30 seconds to do what? Something stupid. Mercer grabbed his rifle and moved. Fast. The way a trained sniper moves when the switch finally flips, and muscle memory overrides everything else. Riley watched him disappear toward high ground, then turned and ran toward the east structure, where Peters, Huang, and the remaining SEALs were conducting their exercise. She found them in 15 seconds. Peters and Huang were practicing tourniquet application on a training dummy, while Harris and Briggs supervised with the bored posture of men babysitting children. Harris! Briggs! Riley's voice carried the command tone she'd been hiding for 2 weeks. Both SEALs looked up, saw the blood on her face, the rifle in her hands, the look in her eyes that didn't belong to any nurse they'd ever met. Brennan is restrained 200 meters west. He's been running weapons through Ironclad Defense Group, selling Igla missiles and cornets to Syrian militias. 3 Marines are buried at Wadi al-Khatib because they found out. NCIS has the evidence. And right now, 12 Ironclad mercenaries are about 90 seconds from this position. Harris and Briggs exchanged a look. Harris was the first to speak. Who the hell are you? Petty Officer First Class Riley Dawson, BUD/S, Class 347, Project Athena. I'm the reason you still have a career, if you make the right choice in the next 10 seconds. Briggs raised his rifle, pointed it at Riley. Brennan said you were a problem. Brennan murdered 3 Marines and buried them in the desert. You want to stand with that? Pull the trigger. But those mercenaries aren't coming to rescue you. They're coming to clean house. Everyone who knows about the pipeline dies today. That includes you. The words hit Briggs like a physical force. His rifle wavered. Riley saw the calculation happening. Loyalty to Brennan versus survival. Institutional training versus self-preservation. Harris was already lowering his weapon, already doing the math that Briggs was still working through. Mercer's rifle cracked from the northeast, then again, then a third time. The sound of shattering glass and screaming brakes carried across the distance. He'd hit the lead vehicle. Bought the 30 seconds Riley needed. "Decide now," Riley said. "Fight with me or die with Brennan." Harris chambered around. "What do you need?" "Southern approach. Crossfire with Mercer. Don't let them flank left." Harris moved without another word. Briggs stood frozen for 2 more seconds. Then he cursed, spat in the dirt, and followed Harris. Not loyalty to Riley. Self-preservation. She'd take it. "Peters! Huang!" Riley turned to the medics. Both were ghost white, trembling, holding rifles they'd qualified on exactly once. "Stay behind cover. If anyone comes through who isn't us, point center mass and squeeze. That's the whole job." "I'm going to throw up," Huang said. "After, I promise. After." Mercer's 4th shot echoed. Then return fire. Heavy, sustained, the ripping sound of automatic weapons tearing air. The mercenaries had dismounted. The fight was on. Riley sprinted toward the contact point. She arrived as the first wave of ironclad operators pushed through the eastern approach. 4 men, body armor, short-barreled HK-416s, moving in a tactical stack that said former military, probably special operations, definitely expensive. She fired from behind cover. 3-round burst. First man's head snapped back. Second dove for cover. Third returned fire that chewed the wall inches from Riley's face, sending fragments into her cheek. She rolled, repositioned, fired again. The second man dropped, clutching his thigh. Harris and Briggs engaged from the south. Their fire was accurate, disciplined. Whatever their moral failings, they were still SEALs, and SEALs shot straight. 2 more mercenaries went down in rapid succession, but the remaining 8 were professionals. They didn't panic, didn't cluster, didn't make the mistakes that got amateurs killed. They spread, flanked, used fire and maneuver to create angles that Riley couldn't cover alone. A burst of automatic fire stitched the ground 3 feet from her position. Riley rolled left, came up firing, dropped 1 more. Mercer's rifle cracked from the rooftop, and another mercenary collapsed mid-stride. 6 down, 6 to go. Riley's magazine ran dry. She swapped to her second, hands moving automatically, the way Instructor Davis had drilled until the motion was faster than thought. She chambered around and swung toward movement on her right flank. Too late. A mercenary had gotten behind her. She saw the barrel rising toward her face, saw his finger tightening on the trigger, saw her own death in the half-second gap between recognition and reaction. The shot came from behind her. Harris. His round caught the mercenary in the shoulder, spun him sideways. Riley finished him with a double tap before he could recover. "We're even, Dawson," Harris shouted from his position. "Don't make me regret this." The remaining 5 mercenaries regrouped, changed tactics. They stopped advancing and started laying suppressive fire. Sustained, overwhelming volume designed to pin Riley's team in place, while 2 of them circled wide. Riley heard the flanking pair before she saw them. Boots on gravel. Fast. Close. She abandoned her position, sprinted through a doorway, and nearly collided with the lead flanker at a distance of 4 feet. No time to aim. She drove the rifle stock into his face, felt bone give way. He staggered. She grabbed his weapon hand, twisted, broke his grip on the rifle, and shot him with his own weapon at contact distance. The second flanker came through behind him. Riley fired twice. Both rounds hit the vest. He didn't go down. His fist caught her jaw, and the world tilted sideways. Riley hit the ground. The flanker stood over her, drawing his sidearm. She kicked his knee from the ground, felt something pop, and he collapsed beside her. They grappled in the dirt, savage and desperate. No technique, just survival. His hands found her throat, squeezed. Riley's vision narrowed to a dark tunnel. Her fingers found a loose rock. She drove it into his temple. Once. Twice. His grip loosened. She twisted free, gasping, coughing, and put a round through his chest from 6 inches away. She lay there for 3 seconds, breathing dust and blood. Every part of her body reporting damage. Broken ribs grinding against each other. Jaw swelling. Throat bruised from the choking. Mercer's rifle cracked twice more. Then silence. Real silence. The kind that follows the last shot. "Clear!" Mercer's voice from the rooftop. Shaking, but certain. Riley forced herself up. Walked through the aftermath on legs that felt like someone else's. Counted bodies. 11 mercenaries down. She found the 12th, trying to crawl toward one of the vehicles. Gut shot, leaving a dark trail in the dirt. He saw her coming and stopped crawling. "Hale will send more," the mercenary said through gritted teeth. "You haven't stopped anything." "I stopped you." Riley zip-tied his hands and left him for the extraction team. Then she walked back to where she'd left Brennan. He was conscious now, zip-ties still secure, watching her approach with an expression she hadn't seen on his face before. Not arrogance, not calculation. Something closer to disbelief. 12 contractors, Brennan said. You killed 12 ironclad contractors with a sniper who can't stop crying and 2 SEALs who switched sides 10 minutes ago. Riley didn't respond. "Who the hell are you, Dawson?" Riley knelt beside him, close enough that he could see the blood on her face and the dust in her hair and the absolute absence of anything negotiable in her eyes. "I'm the woman who's about to dig up her brother's body. And then I'm the woman who's going to make sure you never see sunlight again." She stood. "Mercer, I need the vehicle." The drive to Wadi Al-Khatib took 11 minutes. Riley sat in the passenger seat, holding her ribs together with one arm and clutching Ethan's dog tags with the other hand. Mercer drove in silence, knuckles white on the wheel, jaw clenched against the words that kept trying to escape. "How did he die?" Riley asked. She didn't look at Mercer. Mercer's voice came out fractured, like glass breaking one piece at a time. He confronted Brennan, alone. Nighttime. No weapon. Just the ledger and his conviction that being right meant being safe. Brennan didn't even argue with him. Just pulled his sidearm and shot him. Close range. Chest. Ethan went down, and Brennan told us to grab the body before anyone heard the shot. "Was he alive when you buried him?" The question hit Mercer like a bullet. His whole body flinched. "No. God, no. He was gone before we got to the wadi. I checked. I checked his pulse 3 times because I needed to know." "You needed to know. I know that doesn't mean anything to you. I know you probably want to kill me. I'd want to kill me." Riley said nothing, because Mercer was right. Part of her, the sister part, the grief part, the part that would never fully heal, did want to kill him. But the operator part, the NCIS part, the part that had learned to separate justice from vengeance during 2 years of training, understood that Mercer alive and testifying was worth more than Mercer dead and silent. The vehicle stopped. Mercer pointed. Riley grabbed the entrenching tool and got out. She walked to the spot, looked down at earth that looked like every other piece of earth in this desert. Unremarkable. Anonymous. No headstone. No marker. No flag. She started digging. The soil gave way easily. Loose. Sandy. Like even the ground was tired of holding this secret. At 2 feet, she hit fabric. At 2.5, she found the dog tags. She brushed dirt away with her fingers. Not the tool, her fingers. Working carefully, gently, the way you'd uncover something precious and fragile. Ethan's face, preserved by the dry air. Eyes closed, expression almost peaceful. He looked like he was sleeping. He looked like he did on Sunday mornings when she was 12 and would shake him awake to make pancakes. Riley knelt in the sand beside her brother. She pulled him free of the earth with hands that were bleeding from the fight and the digging and the sheer cost of the last 3 hours. She cradled his head against her chest and pressed her forehead to his. She didn't scream, didn't sob, just breathed, in and out, feeling the stillness where his breathing used to be, feeling the weight of the promise she'd made in a bunk 6 weeks ago. "I'm here, Ethan. I'm going to find you." "I found you," she whispered. "I always find you. Every time you hid when we were kids, I found you. Every single time." She pulled his dog tags free, kissed them, hung them around her neck beside her own. 2 sets of tags, 1 heartbeat. Riley found the other 2 Marines beside Ethan. Lance Corporal James Ruiz, Sergeant Michael Park. She pulled them from the earth with the same care, the same reverence, wrapped all 3 in emergency blankets from the vehicle, laid them in the back seat together, side by side, the way they'd served. Mercer stood 20 feet away, crying without sound. The shovel he'd used 6 weeks ago somewhere beneath the sand they'd just excavated. Riley looked at him, really looked, saw the wreckage of a man who'd chosen fear over courage, and had been paying for it every minute since. "When you testify," she said, "you tell them everything, every detail. Don't protect anyone. Don't minimize. These 3 men deserve the complete truth, even if it costs you everything." "It will cost me everything." "Then it costs you everything." Riley activated the emergency extraction beacon. The signal pulsed upward into a sky that was just beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. Somewhere beyond the horizon, helicopters were spinning up. Langford was mobilizing. The machinery of justice, slow, imperfect, grinding, was finally turning in the right direction. Riley sat in the sand beside the vehicle. Her brother's body was behind her, wrapped in silver, waiting to go home. Brennan was restrained 3 miles west. 12 mercenaries were down. The Red Ledger was safe. The evidence was intact. She held Ethan's dog tags against her lips and listened for the sound of rotors. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat sent pain through her broken ribs. Her hands were torn. Her face was swelling. And somewhere beneath the adrenaline, exhaustion was waiting to crash over her like a wave. But her brother was out of the ground. After 6 weeks in the dirt, in a nameless wadi, in a country that had forgotten his name the moment they buried him, Ethan Dawson was finally coming home. Riley closed her eyes. The first tears she'd allowed herself since arriving at Camp Valor ran silently down her bruised face and fell into the sand beside her brother's grave. She didn't wipe them away. She'd earned them. The helicopters arrived 43 minutes after Riley activated the beacon. 2 Blackhawks and a medevac, rotors beating the dawn air like war drums. Commander Langford stepped off the lead bird before the skids fully settled, tactical vest over her uniform, face carved from stone. She took one look at Riley. Blood-caked, ribs broken, dog tags doubled around her neck, and one look at the 3 silver-wrapped bodies in the vehicle. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. When she did, her voice carried the controlled fury of a woman who'd spent months suspecting the worst and was now staring at proof. "How many hostiles?" 12 ironclad contractors neutralized. Brennan restrained 3 clicks west. Ramos and Cross in custody at the patrol site. Harris and Briggs cooperated. Mercer flipped. Full testimony. Riley's voice was flat, operational, the voice of someone running on fumes and discipline. "And I have 3 Marines who need to go home." Langford nodded to the medevac crew. They moved to the vehicle with stretchers and the quiet reverence of men trained to handle the dead with dignity. Riley watched them lift Ethan's body, watched the silver blanket catch the first light of sunrise, watched her brother leave the desert that had swallowed him 6 weeks ago. "Riley." Langford's hand found her shoulder. Firm, steady. "You need medical attention." "After." "That's not a suggestion." "After I see Brennan loaded onto that bird in restraints. After I watch him leave this place, the same way my brother's leaving it. Then you can tape my ribs." Langford studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. They flew Brennan out on the second Black Hawk. Riley stood on the ground and watched them drag him across the sand, zip-tied, bleeding from the head wound she'd given him, still wearing the smile of a man who believed he was untouchable. He saw Riley watching, locked eyes with her through the helicopter's open door. "Hale has lawyers that cost more per hour than you make in a year," Brennan shouted over the rotors. "I'll be out before Christmas." Riley said nothing, just held his stare until the crew chief slid the door shut and the helicopter lifted him away from Camp Valor for the last time. Then her knees buckled. Langford caught her before she hit the ground. The next 72 hours existed in fragments. Military hospital at Al Udeid. 4 broken ribs confirmed. Hairline orbital fracture. Torn rotator cuff. Grade 2 concussion she'd been ignoring for 14 hours. A doctor who told her she was lucky to be alive. And Riley, who told him luck had nothing to do with it. NCIS flew in a 12-person task force. FBI counterintelligence sent a team from Quantico. 2 JAG officers from the Pentagon arrived and asked Riley the same questions 19 different ways. She gave the same answers every time. Showed them the photographs. Played the audio recordings. Walked them through the supply depot inventory. Handed over the red ledger page by page, while a forensic document examiner confirmed Ethan's handwriting. And an intelligence analyst traced the authorization codes up the chain. The chain led higher than anyone expected. The authorization codes in Ethan's ledger weren't Brennan's. They weren't even Hale's. They belonged to Major General Arthur Kessler, Deputy Director of Special Operations Command. 2 stars, 31 years of service. A man who sat in briefing rooms at the Pentagon and made decisions about where American soldiers lived and died, while simultaneously selling the weapons that killed them. When FBI agents arrived at Kessler's Pentagon office with an arrest warrant, he was on the phone with Victor Hale. The call was recorded. Kessler's exact words: "Contain it. I don't care how. Make the nurse disappear." He never got the chance. The agents cuffed him mid-sentence. He managed to shred 4 documents before they stopped him. 4 pages out of 4,000. The rest became evidence. Victor Hale ran. Montenegro first, Serbia next. Then a private airstrip in Albania, where he thought a chartered jet was waiting to take him to a country without extradition treaties. Instead, a CIA rendition team was waiting with flex cuffs and a windowless aircraft. Hale screamed about diplomatic immunity for 6 hours straight. The rendition team wore earplugs. Riley followed the investigation from her hospital bed, and then from a secure NCIS facility in Virginia, where they moved her after the second death threat arrived. The first threat had been vague. A typed note slipped under her hospital room door that said, "Drop it." The second was specific enough to include the name of her physical therapist and the time of her morning appointments. Langford doubled her security detail. Riley told them to save the manpower. "If they wanted me dead, they wouldn't send notes. They'd send bullets. Langford doubled the detail anyway. On day 19, Mercer came to see her. He stood in the doorway of the secure facility's visiting room the same way he'd stood in that Syrian village, unable to cross the threshold, holding his cover in both hands like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "I pled guilty," he said. "Accessory after the fact. 3 counts. My lawyer offered full immunity for testimony." "And?" "I turned it down." Riley looked at him. Really looked. Past the weight loss and the dark circles and the tremor in his hands that hadn't stopped since the day he'd started talking. "Why?" "Because I dug those graves. I put your brother in the ground. I don't get to walk away from that, because I finally did the right thing 12 months too late." His voice cracked. "Immunity isn't justice. It's a loophole. And those 3 Marines deserve better than a loophole." Something shifted in Riley's chest. Not forgiveness. That word was too simple for what she felt. But something that acknowledged the distance between the man who'd held the shovel and the man refusing to let a lawyer erase what that shovel had done. "When you testify," Riley said, "don't hold anything back. Names, dates, every order Brennan gave, every grave you dug, every night you spent knowing what you'd done and choosing not to speak." She paused. "You owe them the complete truth. That's the only currency that means anything now." "I know." Mercer put his cover on, straightened. "Your brother talked about you every day. Said you were the toughest person he knew. Said you'd end up doing something nobody expected." His jaw tightened. "I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough to stop it. I'm sorry I wasn't the man your brother thought I could be." "You're being that man now. It's late, but it counts." Mercer nodded once, turned, walked out. Riley listened to his footsteps fade down the corridor and wondered if she meant what she'd said, or if she just needed him to leave before the anger came back. Both, she decided. Both were true. The congressional hearings began 6 weeks after the extraction. Riley testified on a Tuesday morning, in dress blues pressed sharp enough to draw blood, her long, dark brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun, her bruises faded to yellow shadows that the cameras caught every time she turned her head. The hearing room was standing room only. Senators, staffers, reporters with notebooks and cameras. And in the front row, 3 families wearing gold star pins and expressions that Riley recognized because she saw the same one in the mirror every morning. Claire Dawson sat in the center, Ethan's wife. Beside her, 4-year-old Madison, coloring in a book, kicking her feet against the chair, occasionally looking up at the flags and the cameras with the uncomplicated curiosity of a child who didn't understand why everyone was so serious. Riley told them everything. Not the version the Pentagon's lawyers wanted. Not the sanitized summary that protected institutional reputations. Everything. The supply depot, the Igla missiles, the Russian encryption modules, Brennan's satellite calls, the hazing, the patrol, the fight, the graves. Senator Catherine Marsh, chair of the Armed Services Committee, leaned forward when Riley described pulling Ethan's body from the earth. "Petty Officer Dawson, you infiltrated a hostile base alone, under deep cover, enduring sustained harassment from a SEAL team, while investigating a murder that included your own brother. At any point, did you consider requesting extraction?" Riley looked at Senator Marsh, then at Claire, then at Madison, who had stopped coloring and was watching Riley with Ethan's eyes, the same shade of brown, the same quiet intensity. "My brother sent me a message before he died. He said, 'If I go dark, look for the red ledger.' He didn't say send someone else. He didn't say, let the system handle it. He trusted me to find the truth, because he knew the system that was supposed to protect him was the same system that got him killed. Riley's voice didn't waver. I wasn't going to let that system decide whether his death mattered. Silence. Absolute. The kind that fills a room when everyone in it recognizes they're hearing something that will be quoted for years. Senator Marsh removed her glasses. The committee has reviewed classified documentation, confirming that you completed BUD/S under Project Athena. You are, to our knowledge, the first woman to earn a SEAL qualification. Can you confirm this for the record? I can confirm that I graduated BUD/S, Class 347. I earned my trident. And the reason this committee was never briefed on Project Athena is because the same people who authorized Brennan's weapons pipeline decided a woman completing SEAL training was more threatening to their careers than Russian missiles killing American Marines. Someone in the gallery applauded. The chairman didn't stop them. Brennan's court-martial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was a mountain. Riley's recordings, Ethan's ledger, Mercer's testimony, forensic ballistics matching Brennan's sidearm to the rounds recovered from all 3 Marines. The military jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on every count. 3 counts of premeditated murder, weapons trafficking, conspiracy, accessory to the deaths of 11 Marines killed by ironclad supplied weapons in Deir ez-Zor. Life without parole at USDB Fort Leavenworth. When the verdict was read, Brennan looked across the courtroom at Riley. She held his gaze the way she'd held it in the Syrian dust, with his blood on her hands and his confession in her ears. She held it until he was the one who looked away. Kessler received 40 years. Hale received life plus 30. 14 military personnel across 3 installations were convicted. Ramos got 22 years. Cross got 18. The Ironclad Defense Group was dissolved, its assets seized, its contracts shredded. Mercer received 12 years. Riley didn't attend the sentencing, but she wrote a letter to the judge, not asking for leniency, not offering forgiveness, just stating facts. He cooperated. He led them to the graves. He chose to plead guilty when immunity was offered. The judge read the letter aloud. Mercer wept through every word. They buried Ethan at Arlington on a morning so still the flags barely moved. Full military honors, 7 rifles, 21 shots, a bugler playing taps with the kind of precision that turns a melody into a wound. The flag folded 13 times and placed in Claire's hands. Madison stood beside her mother, holding a small American flag, watching with wide eyes that would spend years learning the weight of what they'd witnessed. Riley stood at attention through the entire ceremony. Dress blues, trident pinned above her left pocket, 2 sets of dog tags around her neck. She didn't cry. She'd spent her tears in a Syrian wadi with sand in her wounds and her brother's face against her chest. Today wasn't for grief. Today was for honor. After the last mourner left, after the graves crew had lowered the casket and begun filling the earth, Riley knelt beside her brother's grave. She pulled the red ledger from inside her dress blues. The original, not a copy. The one Ethan had written in his cramped handwriting while documenting the crimes that would kill him, and placed it on the freshly turned soil. Mission complete, Ethan. Every name in this book is in prison or on their way. Every weapon has been accounted for. Every family knows the truth about what happened to their sons. She pressed her palm flat against the earth. You were right about me. I found everything. But you were wrong about one thing. You said I was tougher than anyone on your team. Her voice broke. For 1 second. Just one. I'm not. I just had the best reason to keep going." She stood, saluted, held it until her arm trembled. Langford found her at the cemetery gate. Beside her stood a man Riley hadn't expected. Master Chief Samuel Briggs, the instructor who designed Project Athena's training program. Old, scarred across both hands, eyes that carried 3 decades of wars most Americans would never hear about. "Hell of a thing you did, Dawson," Briggs said. No warmth, no softness, just one operator recognizing another. "Your brother would be proud. He'd tell me I took too long." Dawsons, stubborn as they come. Langford handed Riley a plain manila folder. No classification markings, no insignia. "This crossed my desk yesterday. 3 forward operating bases in East Africa. Supply chain irregularities matching the same pattern Ethan documented. Different contractor, different general, same playbook." Riley looked at the folder, looked at Langford, looked back at Arlington's endless rows of white headstones stretching toward the horizon. Thousands of soldiers, fathers and brothers and sons and daughters who'd trusted the people above them to protect the mission and honor the sacrifice. Some of those headstones marked soldiers who died in combat. Some marked soldiers who died because someone in an office decided their lives were worth less than a profit margin. "You're asking me to do this again," Riley said. "I'm asking if you're willing." Riley opened the folder, read the first page. Names she didn't recognize. A base she'd never been to. A pattern she knew by heart because her brother had bled documenting it. She closed the folder, hung Ethan's dog tags outside her dress blues where they caught the morning light beside her own. Those soldiers have families. Someone on that base decided their lives are inventory, expendable, acceptable losses on a spreadsheet. She tucked the folder under her arm, looked at Langford with the same eyes that had stared down Marcus Brennan in the Syrian dust. The same eyes that had watched 12 mercenaries approach and chosen to stay. The same eyes Ethan had described in his final letter. Tougher than anyone he'd ever served with. That someone hasn't met me yet. Riley Dawson walked out of Arlington National Cemetery with her brother's memory around her neck and a new mission under her arm. She didn't look back at the grave. She didn't need to. Ethan wasn't behind her in the ground. He was beside her in the dog tags, in the red ledger, in every step she took toward the next base where someone was hiding something they thought no one would ever find. They called her Bandage Girl once. They tried to humiliate her, break her, bury her the way they'd buried her brother. They were wrong about her. Every single one of them. And somewhere on a base she hadn't seen yet, in a country she hadn't been briefed on, men who thought their secrets were safe had no idea that the woman who'd walked into Camp Valor as a nurse and walked out carrying the truth was already on her way. Riley Dawson didn't stop. That was the thing about her that people kept learning too late.